of course, I'm suddenly realizing there that it's cloudy, so we probably won't see too much sun. Actually, we'll see some rain. We're going to see Lindsey. Look at her lip. She is cold.
It's cold.
She is cold.
It's really cold out here. It's windy and it's cold. We're kind of in an open field, so the wind is just smacking us around out here. The sun is starting to come up. I can see it behind Mark over there. It's a little cloudy, but it's, yes, it's definitely very, very cold. We're at an open field because we're at an airport. We are talking about flying this morning. Chad, you came out here with me on Monday as I took a crash course, shall we say, in flying. It was so much fun. We're going to show you that video here coming up in a little bit. Mike Barron joins me now. He was my instructor, and you do a lot of instructing here because you are a pilot. Explain kind of how you got into the whole aviation thing.
Actually, I grew up in it. My father was a pilot, and I was a little airport bum kid that used to tag along with him all the time. So since I've been basically old enough to walk, he'd drag me to the airport with him, and I got odds and ends jobs, usually the dirty ones. So.
and here you are years later, and you guys have a ton of programs here. Explain a little bit about each of them.
We do. We actually have all kinds of things going on, from flight training. We have, that ranges from gliders up through the standard aircraft. And we have a lot of vintage aircraft, tail dragger training, even a World War II trainer that we do a little bit of aerobatic rides and training in. We do scenic rides, we do aerobatic rides, we do skydiving. We can do the training for skydiving, tandems, up through the full course for people that want to get rated. We've got a little bit of everything.
Now, for people who want to fly, you can go ahead and roll that video as we're talking. People who want to take that flight lesson, what should they know? What do they have to know before they come and do that?
Actually, absolutely nothing. They have to know how to get to the airport. When they show up, we kind of run them through. We give typically an introductory flight similar to what we did the other day. Kind of gives them the brief overview, see if it's something they like, tell them about the requirements at that time, some of the medical requirements that are required to continue if they wanted to get rated.
And now, after that first class, what comes next if people really enjoy it and they want to keep going?
Typically, we continue on with the flight training, and then at some point, early on is better, but they do a ground school that goes along with the flight training. That teaches all the rules and regulations and weather and stuff that you need to know while we're doing the flight training, so we can kind of work them side by side and basically use what they've learned in the ground school, put it to use so it sinks in a little better. And then they do a check ride at the end. There's a ground school written test and then a flight check at the end.
Now, let's say I won the jackpot and wanted to buy a plane and wanted to become a pilot of my own plane. How long does that take?
Typically, if somebody's got depends on how much time they have to invest, but if they can get out here 2 or 3 times a week, works the best. It really keeps things rolling. And about 3 or 4 months typically. Okay,
and there's the video that we shot earlier. That was, for me, was the scariest part when you let go and said, go ahead and take control. Yeah, is it ever nerve-wracking for you?
No, not really.
Okay.
There's these airplanes, we've got so many thousands of hours flying them, and there's just really nothing that can happen at this point. So
now the plane that we flew was a Cessna 170. It's a tail dragger. Correct. And we're going to learn a little bit more about that here coming up in the next half hour.
Can I just say, Lindsey, the other day when we did this, we took a quick course, not a crash course.
Yes,
in flying.
Yeah, yes. It was a very quick course.
We had a good time. Much better weather on Monday to fly, and some windy conditions, which is where we find Lindsey in a small plane.
This is safe. Good morning. Yeah, not in it yet, but this is the plane that I flew Monday, and this is the plane that hopefully, if the wind dies down a little bit, it's pretty windy out right now, so we're going to see how if it dies down, if we can actually get this thing up in the air. But yes, this is a Cessna 170. It's a tail dragger. Mike Barron is the pilot, and he was my instructor on Monday. Explain a little bit about what everything is.
Well, we'll just start at the top here. We've got all the instruments on the top. Airspeed indicator, turn and bank, tells you how fast you're turning, whether you're coordinated or not, which is the coordination of the controls for the turns. Basically a compass, and then a directional gyro, which mimics what the compass says, but it responds a little quicker. Next over we have artificial horizon. Basically duplicates what you would see outside the front of the aircraft. We use it to determine bank angles and pitch attitudes. Next to that is a tachometer. The RPM of the engine is what it keeps track of, as well as the flight hours on the aircraft. Oil pressure, oil temperature, carburetor air temperature, all engine monitoring instruments are on that side, as well as the amp meter talks about whether it's charging or discharging the electrical system. Cylinder head temps, a vertical speed indicator, tells you how fast you're going up and down, followed by an altimeter that tells you what altitude you're at above the ground, or above mean sea level is actually what we typically work from, and then a clock.
All right.
Everybody recognizes that.
And these are, they look like pedals, but they actually change the tail, correct?
Yep, they're the rudders. They control your directional control on the ground, and as well as coordinate turns in flight. And the top of the rudder pedals are actually your brakes.
All right, let's move back a little bit to give Mark a little bit of a break. These wings are kind of low, and he's a tall guy. Explain a little bit about this plane.
It's what they call a conventional geared aircraft, a tail dragger. As we see, it's got a tail wheel in the back instead of a nose gear on the front. Mm-hmm. These aircraft were originally designed when people were flying out of fields, when they were rough. They handle the rough terrain a little better. They don't have the nose gear to get down in the mud and ruts and so forth. So it's all restored. We've got it. We're glad to have it. It's a beautiful airplane.
Yeah,
we fly it quite a bit, and it was one of the most popular of Cessna's lineup back in the day for the GIs after they came out of World War II, and continued their flying careers after that. So
a lot of history on this plane.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes.
And a lot of your planes, if we look back here, a lot of them are actually tail draggers. Is there a reason that you choose to have so many?
I love them.
Good reason.
Yeah. No, it's everything we do. We have a vintage flair here. It's kind of like classic cars. Well, these are the classic aircraft. So.
All right, great. We are going to watch the wind and see what we're going to do. We're going to play it by ear, kind of. I don't want to go up if it's too windy, and I know that there's some restrictions on that. So we're gonna play it by ear here, and hopefully get up in the air in a little bit.
I would say getting up is no problem. It's the
staying
landing
up and
in the wind that would not be fun. I've landed in a small Cessna in strong winds. It's not a fun thing to do.
I've only been in one plane and it had like 10,000 seats, so you didn't even feel like you were in a plane.
10,000 seats.
Well, maybe not quite that many, but.
It is takeoff time. Lindsey Boetsch is live this morning at the Hannibal Regional Airport. Here she is.
Inside of there.
There we go. Behind the pilot controls. She's going to take off.
There she goes.
Here on live TV. I was with her on Monday when she did she called it a crash course. I prefer to call it a quick lesson. She did this on Monday, so she's an old hat at this. She's done this twice now. She's with Mike Barron of Barron Aviation. So look how windy.
Yeah, you can see the wings kind of shaking back and forth a little bit, but I would be super nervous. I'm kind of nervous for Lindsey right now, but obviously she's doing a fantastic job. I don't believe she's taking off though, correct?
I think Mike was going to handle the takeoff and landing and give it to her once they got to an altitude of about 5,000 feet. Okay. That's what we flew the other day over beautiful Hannibal, Missouri. So there they go, take off. She probably has the controls by now at this point.
So Chad, you would do this. You've jumped out of a plane before, correct?
Yeah, one not too much bigger than that actually, and they offer skydiving at Barron Aviation as well as the flying lessons that Lindsey's.
So would you fly a plane?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've actually flown a plane. We used to have a coworker here who had his pilot's license, and we took a trip to Wisconsin one time for a story, and he let me have the controls mid-flight.
So you have flown it too?
I have flown, yeah.
Wow.
And I'm not going to say that it was easy. I should say it was easier than I thought it would be. The flying part, the takeoff and landing, of course, I didn't get to do.
Sure. Now, is the resistance when you're holding on to that, because it's not really a wheel, when Lindsey was showing us earlier, but you have to like pull in and back, and you kind of do alternating with your feet to do
right, and there's pedals that change the tail that changes your direction. So the steering wheel, you know, is there also to guide you. But yeah, you pull up, I think, to take off, push in to land. And this plane is what's called a tail dragger. This is kind of rare. Mike told us the other day that a lot of even commercial airline pilots and pilot enthusiasts have never been in a tail dragger plane, but the landing gear is on the back instead of the front.
So it's kind of like Lindsey's learning to drive on a gravel road. She's learning to fly in an old vintage tail dragger plane, which is really, really, really cool. And a lot of their planes out there are all vintage. You said they normally have a vintage feel. So kind of a neat shot to see Lindsey up in the air like that.
Yeah, so we'll let them get back on the ground and check in with her hopefully at the end of the show. In the meantime,